So let's start. Hello, I'm Simon Legrand. So as Frederic explained earlier, I work at INRIA Paris, and I'm at 30% on the FreeFM continuous integration since September. Let's go. So for newbies, what the continuous integration is, well, it's a process, an ensemble of process that ensure that your source code is working properly. Okay. So why we want continuous integration? Because when you have development process, you have many changes in your code, and you don't want to break what already exists. And at the boundary with what we call continuous delivery or continuous delivery, you want to offer packages to the users that are ready to use, like deb packages for Debian distribution, executables for Windows, DMG for Mac, for example. You don't want them to have the code to compile the code, because it's tedious and sometimes a bit tricky. And how do you do that? Well, there are many different tools to do that, many practices, but the main idea is to frequently try to build your application, to run the test if you have a test base, and to package it for a variety of operating systems and architecture. So that's the ideal picture of what continuous integration is. In the case of FreeFM, so previously, before I arrived on the project in September, it was Jenkins that was used to describe what we want to run on which machine. And we used the INRIA virtual machine farm to run all the tests. So on different stuff like different versions of Linux. But the main problem of that is that INRIA stopped the support of Jenkins recently. And the INRIA virtual machines doesn't include Mac OS and ARM architectures, which are two things that FreeFM wants to support. And what we will merge soon, when I say soon, it's going to be around Christmas. That's going to be a nice gift, is the use of GitHub Actions for the continuous integration. So GitHub Actions is like the equivalent of the Jenkins. You describe what you want to do in YAML files. So it's quite new, but it's quite well made. It's easy to read and to understand. And it uses a GitHub virtual machine. So you have a large variety of operating systems and architecture that are supported. Like Mac OS, the last versions of Mac OS on the last CPUs, the M1, 2, I don't know which one we are now. And I just want to precise that all these changes have been initiated by Simon Garnotel, who is not yet working, who is not anymore working on the project. But thanks to him, I had a nice basis on which to start. And that's it. So what is the strategy of the continuous integration we want to use for FreeFM? So it's not fully decided, but the idea will be to run the builds and the tests when we push on develop, so that we ensure that we didn't break the existing code. We run the build and test when we merge requests on the develop branch, so that reviewers who want to contribute from a fork we want to check the code from contributors will know the state of the code. We know that the contributors didn't break anything, and ideally we would run those tests when merging on the master branch, so that we can show the users that want to download the packages that the current release has been tested, it's been working properly. And then concerning the release of the packages, when we tag a commit with version major.minor, it will trigger automatically the build of all the packages for the users to use in the end. So that's still to complete, might be some details, but that's the main idea. Okay, so that's the test metrics with the current state of the test. So you see here on the left part, do you see the pointer? Yes. That we support currently the three main operating systems with different versions. And the idea is to propose 5 different the colors of FreeFrame, let's say, minimal versions without dependencies, sequential versions, which uses like a lot of dependencies, but no without MPI, and 3 different implementations of MPI. The last one being the one used on Microsoft, so that's why it's not available on Linux and Mac OS. And where I put an X, it's where it's still buggy. But you can see that on all the platform for now, you have at least one parallel version that is working. So that's good news. And to give you an idea, the longest test lasts 1 hour and 45 minutes. Just precise that, don't push all your commits, individual commits on the repo. Otherwise, it's going to trigger a lot of tests. Like, be sure to push some things quite big enough to save some resources. And then to finish, okay, the different packages that we will propose. Ubuntu, so Debian packages, version 22 and 24 for Intel architecture. macOS DMG. So I was told, I didn't check that when DMG built on macOS 13 should be compatible with the N+2 version on the same architecture, obviously. So we have one DMG built on the macOS 13 that should work with macOS 15. And the executable for Windows 11 for Intel architecture. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, I will show you on my fork. So adding the GitHub Actions means adding a folder to your repo, it's .github, and inside of it you have the definition of what they call workflow. So a workflow is like a test base. So here you see, like, for example, the minimal test, the minimal version that we want to test. So you define, for example, for Linux. Yes, sure. Is it better? So for Linux, you define the different versions you want to test, the 2 configs, the debug and release, and then you have the different steps to configure, the build, etc. For macOS. So that's pretty readable. It's quite nice, well organized. And when you run your test, you have access to so the action part. So here you see there is a lot of red, but this is still good news, because if you want to check individual tests, you have the list here of individual tests. So if I want to see what's wrong with the full version on OpenMPI, for example, you click on it, you see that inside of it you have all these combinations that have been tested, and the 2 that are not working is the 2 on macOS 14. I click on that to see the logs, and you have access to everything that happened on during the workflow. And here I see that I had a problem with Fortran that didn't find MPI in it, so I can debug this way a commit which contained buggy stuff. So that's quite easy to use. Of course, if you want to add some test, like a merge request would be necessary, but syntactically and in terms of organization, it's easy to contribute. And I think that's all I wanted to show you. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but I'm done. Yes.
All the runners are GitHub hosted?
Yes, fortunately the limits are quite large.
Okay. So as an INRIA engineer, do you know if INRIA provides self-hosted runners, and is it planned to use some self-hosted runners for the potential? Or?
It has been done at individual scale. Okay. So there is nothing official, but if we have a machine, we can I think we can open a port toward the outside toward GitHub. We check with the IT, but it should be doable. Yes.
And so in the list of GitHub hosted runner,
Yes.
you listed the Windows with x86.
Yes.
Are there any Windows ARM machine or?
Not that I know. Not yet, at least.
Yes.
Yeah. So you are talking about different version of NPI, NPI C8 or OpenP.
Yes.
How about the compiler versions? For example, GCC or LLVM or Intel compiler?
For now, it's not part of the matrix test, but we could use a set of tests with different compilers. On Mac, it's mainly Clang. On Linux, it's going to be GCC. And but we could test GCC as well on Mac. I have tried it myself, GCC on Mac, and I had some troubles with the linker. I think there are weird things with the recent versions of Mac that I don't understand yet, but it could be added. It could be added. Yes.
So I was thinking what kind of the written on supercomputer, but it's sometimes not also not Linux, but using different compilers. Typical Intel compiler.
Ah, yes, with the Intel
Yeah,
compiler.
so it's better. Very good.
You mean in terms of performance?
Yeah, so the Intel NPI, NPL, and Intel compilers good for the supercomputer.
Yes. Well, if I don't know if you're interested to test the Intel compilers, but it could be. It's technically doable because I think Intel compiler is now free to use.
So it's
Yeah.
interfaces I can promote it.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe just a small comment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but so most of the CI was initially done like I think 5 years ago by Axel Fourneau as a research engineer back then.
Yes.
Then Simon Garnotel tried to switch to started the transition from Jenkins to GitHub, and then Simon is trying to finish up the process. But what is in place is mostly a copy paste of what was previously done in Jenkins back in the days. And back then we didn't test many different compiler options. And so, as you said, it was CLang for macOS and GCC for Linux. And so I think you stick to that approach for now. We could try something different.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've tried GCC for the Mac OS, but didn't manage to make it work, so I switched back to Clang.
Question.
Yes.
Is it worth it to add Docker as an alternative?
Well, if you want to add new flavors of new distributions, for example, like CentOS of a Red Hat distribution, for example, I don't think GitHub offers native virtual machines under Red Hat. So maybe in this case, we could like pull a container, a Red Hat container, and run the test on it. It's completely doable. We can even have our own images, containers, and use them to run the CI. Yes.
So in fact, we had a previous job on Jenkins as well, pushing Docker release. And so, well, the NVIDIA Jenkins kind of shut down everything. And so there is a free-fan Docker image, but we are currently stuck at job version 4.12. And so maybe we could also think of transitioning that part of the previous Jenkins into GitHub Action job. But we do have a Docker free-fan image.
That's good.
Yes.
Okay. So I think it could be useful if somebody uses strange architecture, they can send a mail to say, I want to compile this kind of architecture. So it could be useful for us to know. Of course, if you have the architecture to help you to see where is the problem.
Well,
It's one of the difficulty of FreeFrame to have a complete version on any architecture.
in this case, we would have to buy, I would say, a machine, a physical machine.
No. You can help the people to compile FreeFrame, even to connect on this computer and try to see where is the problem. Because the real difficulty on all this stuff is to make the link of FreeFrame with all the library. It is a terrible job. Okay, so
Thank
no
you.
more questions. I don't see if there are questions on the web. No questions, so thanks again.
Thank you.